It's great to have you.
Hi.
Thanks for spending your time with us.
Thanks for inviting me, Moritz.
How did you arrive here today in this chair as the head of precision services at DSM? Tell me the arc. What got you here?
Well, I've been everywhere. I've done every job on the earth, and I think that's the prerequisite. It's to be open, to travel the world. And before I was in agriculture, and I was in Syngenta, big agricultural company in the crop area. And then I really wanted to drive digital. And so I did an education and on AI, artificial intelligence, and that's how I ended up then at dsm-firmenich and to bring the digital transformation. So 7 years ago when I started, we had zero digital, and with that then we introduced precision services, our digital services, but also, let's say, customer portal, e-commerce, CRM, and so on. So now I can say we're fully digital, more or less.
Okay. And you drove that digital transformation in DSM? That was your main focus?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, good. So picking up that topic of digital transformation in animal production, and specifically in aquaculture, give me a little bit of an idea, like where are we in context to the other animal production fields, and where in aquaculture are the fields we have the most need still for?
Yeah. So we asked ourselves this question as well, where are we as an industry? And we actually worked with BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, to see where the different industries are. And normally in digital transformation you have an S-curve. So livestock farming is really at the beginning, and they're still using paper and pen to collect data. They're not using yet artificial intelligence, or only in certain pockets. So they're only using 50% of the data. And with our precision services, with our software and our consultants, we can help the farmers to use 100% of the data. And with that, they can also increase the productivity, have healthier animals, and reduce the environmental emissions. Now, the aqua industry is about 5 years ahead of the livestock industry. And the beauty in aqua industry is that we have understood the advantages of digital, the advantages of data analytics, big data, and especially artificial intelligence, to bring the data together and to have simple and actionable insights. And then ahead of the curve is the crop industry, and even more ahead is the tractor industry.
Mm-hmm. And how does that express itself, like that distance, these jumps? Are they comparable in distance, or are there massive differences between the level of readiness?
Yeah, you look like the livestock industry and the crop industry, there are at least 10 years difference. And I would even say in the US, it's even 15-year difference. And 15 years is a lot of time. And I think we need to help the farmers to bring more digital to life, to bring it into their farms. We need to give them cameras. We need to give them let's say for ruminants, we need to give them ear tags. So each species has their own technology they need to adopt.
Mm-hmm. And for aquaculture specifically, what are the technologies that are driving this change mainly, for instance, in salmon?
So what's really important is, I would say, is the cameras, the feeding cameras, to make sure, for example, that the feed goes at the right level and we don't have waste. And we make sure that economically it's also making sense for the farmer. I think what's really important is sustainability. We need to introduce sustainability calculators. For example, we have one sustainability calculator is Sustel. And here we have it in the salmon industry, in the shrimp industry, but also in the marine fish. And we're really measuring, let's say, 19 parameters, be it CO2, nitrogen, methane, water use, land use, and so on, along the value chain. I think that's really important, that we measure the CO2 footprint, for example, in the crop production, feed production, but then also farm production up to the retailers and to the supermarket. When we actually eat a kilogram of salmon, that we understand that it causes 8 kilograms of CO2 along the value chain.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a calculation a few years back of basically a book, a professor that approached our world from the standpoint of everything contains a certain amount of fossil fuel. Everything we see, everything that's energy-based, will express in a certain amount of fossil fuel. So for instance, a kilogram of grain will equal to, I don't know, number out of my head, 200 milliliters of gasoline, something like that. Do you know any equivalents for this in aquaculture? A, on the level of having measured this, and B, how this stands up to other food production?
In aquaculture, I couldn't tell you. The only thing we're thinking in CO2 equivalent. That is our measurement, key measurement. That I said it's 1 kilogram of salmon causes 8 kilogram of CO2 equivalent. And the most production is mainly in the feed production. 80% of this 8 kilogram comes from feed, and another 15% comes from the farm production, and only 5 to 10% is happening at retail level or supermarket level.
So how does digital transformation then help sustainability?
So it does measure where you are, and you have to import certain data. Most of it we import actually from external databases or directly from your feed supplier, for example, or then we have best mix connections as an example with a feed formulation software. And then you calculate on these 19 parameters where you are, and then we need to talk with each other because we need to have a plan how you reduce actually the CO2 footprint as an example. And there you have different possibilities to reduce. I can give you an example. Is, for example, if you add feed additives to your feed, you don't need that much feed. So you can produce more with less. And that's then more sustainable. So understanding the data and then reducing it, we can help. And then also you have a CO2 certificate, which you can then sell on the insetting market.
On the practical level, from the perspective of dsm-firmenich, what does the company offer a farmer, a feed mixer, an ingredient customer that is looking at digital transformation and sustainability? What does DSM offer on a level of products that they can buy, they can engage with?
So first of all, it's measuring, and then a consultant comes and discusses the different measures you can take, and there we have lots of feed additives. And be it, for example, carotenoids, high D, really brings this additional health benefit where the animals are also then healthier. The wound healing, as an example, is much faster. The reproduction is better through these feed additives, and that really then brings the additional value and higher production and less input costs, which then makes a farm more sustainable. What we have seen in our data as well is farms that are productive and really have a high return on investment and then really are profitable, they're also the most sustainable one. So I think we need to stop with this myth of sustainability costs. No, it can go hand in hand, and mostly the most profitable companies are the most sustainable companies.
How is that? What do you see in the data?
What we're seeing is less waste. You have to be, I think, and that's the advantage of data and digital. You know exactly when it's enough, when it's too much, when it's too little, and you can adjust. And these adjustments are sometimes 1%, less than 1%, but that's where you have the sweet spot. And you don't use too much feed, you don't use too much nitrogen, you try to reduce it. So Sustel is really seeing where are the hotspots in a farm, and you can reduce the water use, you can reduce the land use, and so on. So there are 19 parameters where you then can dive in and really make adjustments, and the smallest adjustments are making a big difference. I can give you an example. What we are seeing is the feed is the biggest cost driver. And if you have feed, for example, soybean meal or soybean imported from the US, of course, that has a huge CO2 footprint. If it's locally sourced, then it's also cheaper and it's more sustainable. And that's what we're seeing now, the trends to source locally. And transport is not that reliable anymore as we've seen previously.
So that brings me to my next question. That's actually a very good point, because we've seen a large grade of efficiency be achieved over the last few decades in aquaculture. FCRs are normally starting with 1 point something at this point.
Yeah.
And we've also seen demonstrated that aquaculture actually does not require more marine resources as a function of production. Marine production has remained, or fishery production has remained equal, and the percentage of marine ingredients in aquaculture feed has gradually actually diminished over time.
Yeah.
So where are the fields where we still have efficiencies to gain? Where are the areas where we still need new solutions and we can still jump to a new curve potentially?
I think we still have some products, like we've heard today, Heidi. And there really, we haven't had it registered yet in aqua. And that's really where we see the advantages that the animals will become more efficient. But it's small amounts we need to add to really vitamin D. And I think as well, sustainability, as we mentioned. And I think satellite pictures could help as well. I think this is improving. Where we are seeing as well from ruminants, and where we see the problems as well, is internet connection. On the sea, you don't have internet connection. So how do you overcome this? You have no 5G. The satellite then help. I think their connectivity and big data could help on real-time data.
Mm-hmm. Paint me a picture of how you see aqua going forward and how you see the industry arriving, or what the industry looks like when it reaches its potential in digital transformation.
I think we more need to look at the surrounding, what regulations is doing. And that's not what I'm afraid of, but that's what I see is happening. So we see governments introducing regulations that is affecting the aqua industry. And I give you an example. For example, Ireland, they're introducing a target of greenhouse gas reduction of 25% by 2030, and especially in agriculture. Second, Denmark is introducing by 2030 a 16 euro tax on per ton of CO2 produced, and especially in aquaculture and agriculture. And we are seeing other countries doing the same. So it's really urgent that we look at it and really reduce the CO2 emissions. And I think that should be the target over the next years. And by 2030, it's happening. All these laws come into effect. Now, 2030, you think, it's 5 years, 4 years far away, but it's 4 crop harvests away. This is soon happening. And we need to go already now, where are we today? Where are we going in the future? We also need to support, for example, big supermarkets or big retailers that have the target by 2030 to reduce their greenhouse gases by 50%. And I think this reduction can only happen when the farms are more efficient and more sustainable, and also the feed production. So I would put my efforts on there, because by 2030, everything needs to be in place and the reduction needs to pay off. What we're seeing as well is that, for example, supermarkets are paying up to 100 euros for every ton of CO2 saved. So I think we need to work together as a value chain and support the supermarket and retailers. And I've just read in The Economist an article that companies are really struggling to deliver the 2030 target, and it's getting closer. So I think it's not only about FCR, it's also about FCR, but it's also about the whole effort of the value chain to create this 2030 target and also to achieve it.
Are there any realistic offset programs you know of that are focusing around regenerative aquaculture?
There are CO2 certificates which we can offset in the insetting market. So we do see that this is more and more a trend, that we actually can then, once you generate these CO2 certificates, we can also trade them. It's still a young market, but it's something we're supporting, and we see companies coming together and really work on that.
Mm-hmm. What are these certificates largely based on? What is the capturing mechanism?
So important is that you are according to the laws, and we have in the EU, we have European Union, we have plenty of laws where you clearly say that is in and that is out. For example, the Sustel calculations, they're done with an institute from Blanc, the Blanc Institute, where you are complying with the ISO certificate and also complying with the rules of the EU to really say that's your CO2 footprint and that's how you can reduce it. If not, anybody can say, oh, I've reduced the CO2 footprint. But no, it has to follow a certain rules, and we have to standardize these rules along the value chain.
Mm-hmm. Not everything can be solved on the corporate level, just to the fact that larger companies, corporates, they need a while to move on certain projects.
Mm-hmm.
There are many opportunities out there on a technological level still where we can help farmers achieve these CO2 goals, achieve their efficiency goals. For the innovators out there, mm-hmm. what companies do you think need to be started? What solutions should be solved by startups for us to achieve these targets and accelerate the development?
I think important is data analytics and data collection. Everything starts there and ends there. And these startups need to work on machine learning algorithms to also create insights and then can easily communicate them. Now, I see the problem that farmers, we as humans, we don't pay for software. We're not willed to pay too much. So startups have difficulties to really create lots of sales and to stay alive. We see that a lot of startups are going bankrupt because they have cash issues. So I think to be in a startup, it's very difficult, and that's why I would recommend that they work with a bigger company that have more the cash and give the freedom to operate to the startups, not to worry about every month, do I have enough cash to survive? And I think that's where, again, I plead for collaboration and care for the industry, for the farmer, that we can create this ecosystem to collect the right data and analyze it and create easy and actionable insights.
Okay, so we're basically looking at, we need good data infrastructure, we need good data collection, we need collaboration, we need to make sure somebody makes some money at some point, that we can keep going, and then we should be on the right track.
Yeah, and I think to make the money is difficult.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that everybody in the value chain can make money, especially the farmers, but also the people that develop, or the companies that develop the software. It's not easy, it takes time, the adoption is not easy, digital adoption takes a lot of effort. And the human always goes through this change curve of denial. I can work as I've worked over the last 30, 40 years, I don't need to change. So, and then comes even the depression. Everybody is changing around me, I need to change as well. And only then you realize actually it brings you benefit. But this down curve can take years. And that's the long breath startups need. And only with a cash injection, actually you can survive this breath.
Mm-hmm. Last question here for especially that friction of change.
Yeah.
Any suggestions also for the farmers, for the feed producers out there that are trying to adopt new technology? How can they reduce that friction of change for them? How can they move faster?
Well, change is always the most difficult at home in your own company. I've seen that. I'm now 7 years doing change management. I actually did a change management course. I would recommend it to everybody to understand the phases the human goes through. You cannot just skip one phase. You need to go through this depression. But what you can do is help that this down phase is not too long and not that steep. And that's what I'm recommending. I, with my team, we have weekly stand-up calls on change management. For each country, you have a different activity because there is somewhere else in the change curve. They need something else. Just having a course or a training for some hours a day is not enough. You need to repeat. You need to also explain the why. Why do you need change? And only then, when you get the why, you can move on to the next stage. How do I change? So I think we need to understand the human psychology, and with that, then gently but firm, say that's where you have to go. One philosophy or one statistics, change only happens if top management is bought in. If the CEO is not bought in, and the leadership below, it's not going to happen.
Good. Well, we'll make sure to tell them then.
Good.
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you very
for
much.
Your time.
Moritz.
It was a pleasure.